voters will choose between that former general, who's now Defence Minister, a former academic who became the governor of the capital, Jakarta, and a lifelong public servant who was governor of Central Java.
And there's already been a heated campaign with questions about the role of political dynasties and the broader health of governance in the world's largest Muslim democracy. Sharon Davies is the director of the Herb Faith Indonesia Engagement Centre and Associate Professor of Indonesian Studies at Monash University and joins us now from Melbourne. Good morning.
Good morning, Dan. Nice to be here.
What are you expecting over the coming days? Because the figures are extraordinary. 200 million people are eligible to vote. They're expecting an 80% attendance rate there. There are 820,000 polling stations, rather. And not only are they electing, as we're going to be talking about, the new president, but there are 20,000 politicians to be elected. It is extraordinary, the scope of this.
It is absolutely extraordinary. So this is the third largest democracy in the world. And as you say, the voter turnout will be over 200 million people spread across 6,000 islands and a very high voter turnout. So it's about 80%. So people do really want to have their say in Indonesia. And I've just, a few days ago, actually got back from Indonesia, accompanying 65 Monash students on a study abroad experience. And, you know, getting to the airport, we were delayed for 2 hours because, as you can see in this footage here, people come out. There's like rallies all across the country. People are quite engaged in the upcoming election.
What was the sense, the mood that you picked up while you were travelling around Indonesia with that group on that study tour?
There's a lot of excitement. People are keen for a new election, and it brings a lot of excitement. So again, we can see on this footage here that people are coming out and supporting their preferred voter. It's also pretty chaotic. A lot of the demonstrations and rallies, people can get a financial incentive to go out on the street and demonstrate for their favourite candidate. So it can create a whole lot of chaos. Maybe there's a little bit of unease. Again, such a large election and many contentious issues. So there can be some unease. And there's also some scepticism around the quality of democracy, as you alluded to earlier. One of the candidates running, the deputy for Prabowo, who you mentioned is leading in the polls, he's actually the son of the current president. And so there's this dynastic sense in Indonesia that maybe there's a bit of support for particular candidates over others.
And let's stick with him because he's actually quite young, I think 36, and there are laws there that you need to be 40 before you can run. And it wasn't without controversy of how that rule was set aside, was it?
That's absolutely right. And so some of the scepticism about the quality of Indonesian democracy surfaced when the son of the current president wanted to run as the vice president for Prabowo. But of course, he's 36 years old, and the regulation states that you need to be 40 to be able to run for president. But it's very helpful if you're the president of the country and your brother-in-law is the person who has the power to change that law. So the brother-in-law changed the law to say that the son could run even though he was only 36.
Yeah, it certainly was controversial and clearly continues to be. Let's talk about Prabowo Subianto because he is the defence minister. It wasn't that long ago that he was on the other side of politics to Joko Widodo, or President Jokowi as he's known. In fact, Prabowo is a former military strongman and ran against Jokowi at the last two elections. I was there in 2014 when they both claimed victory on the same day and there was a whole lot of unrest around that. How has he come to be leading in collaboration, seemingly, with Jokowi's son?
I mean, one of the extraordinary things about Indonesia is the complexities and paradoxes. I think in many countries, if you were the rival of the current president, you would never form a collaboration with them. But in Indonesia, there are bigger issues at stake. And so when Prabowo lost against Jokowi, he was invited to become the defense minister, which he has done. And now Jokowi, so they were rivals, but now, of course, Jokowi's son is running with Prabowo. And Prabowo's had an extraordinary history and not always good. He was banned for a long time from entering the US, I believe, because of his involvements in various human rights atrocities. And so he has a particularly marked and controversial background, but he has worked hard to reimagine himself. And so one of the things my students were pointing out when we're driving around Indonesia is that there's a cartoon characters. So Prabowo has reinvented himself, or tried to reinvent himself as much more of this affectionate uncle, to try and remove himself from his past authoritarian leanings to present himself now as a person of the people. So according to the polls, that seems to be working.
I could talk to you about this all day. We are up against the clock. Just briefly, what will you be looking to from this election outcome in terms of relations for Australia?
Well, as our largest neighbour, Indonesia is incredibly important to us. It will soon, within a generation, be the fourth largest economy in the world. So it's particularly important that Australia continues to strengthen our relationship with Indonesia. Keating, back in the day, former Prime Minister, said Indonesia is our most important neighbour. And that's for strategic and economic interests, as well as just being a good neighbour. So hopefully the outcome of this election, the Australian government can continue to work successfully with them, and that Australians continue to learn more about our largest neighbour.
Well, I hope we'll be talking to you more about it. Sharon Davies, thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan.